My husband always said I was theatrical, a drama queen. So when I discovered he was having an affair, I decided to lean into the role he'd written for me. I threw a funeral for our marriage, complete with a hall, black drapes, and a casket, and I made him the guest of honor at the burial. If you believe that some betrayals are so profound they deserve more than just a quiet goodbye, that they demand a final, unforgettable performance, then you're in the right place. Go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and prepare yourself. Because this is a story of how I didn't just close a chapter of my life. I entombed it, our life, to the outside world, and for 6 years, to me, was a masterpiece of domestic bliss. We were Madison and Daniel, a name that friends said in one breath, as if we were a single entity. Our home was a renovated bungalow with a sprawling garden I was fiercely proud of, a living testament to the love and effort we'd poured into its foundations. Our photos, framed in silver and arranged chronologically on the mantelpiece, told a story of sun-drenched vacations, cozy Christmases, and easy, unforced smiles. We were the couple people pointed to at parties and said, "See? It is possible." Daniel was the architect of this beautiful illusion, and I his willing co-star. He was charming in a way that felt both effortless and meticulously crafted. He remembered the names of my friends' children. He always brought my mother her favorite flowers, and he had this way of touching the small of my back in a crowd that felt like an anchor, a quiet declaration of us against the world. He was a successful financial consultant, a man who moved through the world with an unshakable confidence that I, a freelance illustrator who often worked in the quiet solitude of my home studio, found both intoxicating and grounding. Our evenings had a rhythm, a comfortable, soothing melody. He'd come home, the sound of his keys in the lock a familiar click that signaled the end of my workday. He'd find me in the kitchen, wrap his arms around my waist from behind, and rest his chin on my shoulder, inhaling whatever I was cooking. "Smells incredible, Mads," he'd murmur into my hair. As always, we'd eat dinner, talk about our days, and then settle onto the couch, my legs draped over his, a silent, shared language of intimacy. It was a lie, a beautiful, intricate, 6-year lie, and it all came crashing down on a Tuesday. It was a day like any other. The air was thick with the late evening humidity of August. I was in our laundry room, a small, warm space that always smelled of lavender and clean cotton. I was folding a load of his work shirts, the fabric still warm from the dryer. It was a mundane task, one I'd done 1,000 times before, a simple act of care that felt like a cornerstone of our shared life. I took a strange comfort in it, in the neat stacks of his folded clothes, a tangible piece of our domestic harmony. He was in the shower, the sound of the water a distant, rhythmic hiss. His phone, which he'd left on our dresser, buzzed. It was a sharp, intrusive sound in the quiet of our bedroom. I glanced at it, thinking it was probably his boss with a late-night query. But the screen lit up, and a preview of the message flashed across the lock screen. My hands, still holding one of his freshly laundered shirts, froze. The message wasn't from his boss. It was from a name I didn't recognize, a woman named Chloe. The message itself was only a few words, but they were words that detonated my entire world. "Last night was unforgettable. Can't wait to see you again, Red Heart." The red heart emoji seemed to pulse on the screen, a vibrant, mocking symbol of a joy that didn't belong to me. The shirt in my hands slipped from my fingers and fell to the floor in a soft heap. A cold, metallic taste filled my mouth. The blood drained from my face, and the room, just a moment ago so warm and comforting, felt suddenly icy alien. I could hear my own heart, a frantic, panicked thumping in my ears that drowned out the sound of the shower. This is a mistake, I thought. A misunderstanding. A wrong number. My mind scrambled for a rational explanation, for any life raft to cling to in this sudden, violent storm. My hand trembled as I reached for the phone. It felt unnaturally heavy, like a stone. We had a rule, no secrets. I knew his passcode. It was our anniversary date. The irony was a bitter pill. My thumb hovered over the numbers, a silent war raging within me. The person I was 5 minutes ago, the trusting, happy wife, wouldn't have dared. But that woman was gone. In her place was a stranger, a woman whose hands were shaking but whose mind was hardening into a sharp, cold point of necessity. I had to know. I typed in the date. The phone unlocked. My breath hitched. I opened his messages, my finger tapping the screen with a dreadful, robotic precision. There it was, a thread with Chloe. And it wasn't one message. It was a novel. Weeks of them. Months. Scrolling up, my world dissolved line by line. Counting down the seconds until I can get my hands on you. You're the only thing that gets me through these endless meetings. I meant what I said last night. I'm falling in love with you. There were hotel bookings, confirmed for dates. He told me he was on overnight business trips. There were photos of her, laughing over a glass of wine, her face glowing with an intimacy that should have been mine. There were declarations of love, poetic and passionate, words he hadn't said to me with such fire in years. He was living a completely separate life, a vibrant, secret world where I was nothing more than a domestic inconvenience he had to return to. I felt a wave of nausea, so powerful I had to brace myself against the dresser. My lungs felt tight, as if a steel band were constricting around my chest. I couldn't breathe. Every loving gesture, every tender word he had ever given me was now suspect, tainted. Was he thinking of her when he kissed me goodnight? Was our entire marriage just a comfortable stage for his real life, his real passions? The sound of the shower stopped. Panic, cold and sharp, lanced through me. He was coming. My mind, which had been a maelstrom of pain and confusion, suddenly became icily clear. A strange, almost preternatural calm washed over me. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to throw the phone at his head. I wasn't going to dissolve into a puddle of tears on the floor and beg him for an explanation. Why? Because he would lie. He would twist it, turn it back on me, call me crazy, jealous, insecure. He would use his practiced charm to manage the situation, to smooth it over, to make me doubt what I was seeing with my own eyes. I had seen him do it to others. I would not allow him to do it to me. No. He had made his choice in the shadows. I would make mine in the light. Everyone was going to see the truth. Not my version, not his version. The cold, hard, undeniable truth. With a steadiness that terrified me, I took screenshots. Dozens of them. I scrolled, snapped, capturing the entire sordid history of his betrayal. I forwarded the photos of the hotel receipts to a secret email address I created on the spot. I saw a voicemail from her and, my heart hammering, played it on the lowest possible volume, pressing the phone hard against my ear. Her voice was breathy, seductive. His was worse. A saved reply he must have recorded for her. I wish I was coming home to you instead, he whispered. I saved the audio file. I deleted my digital footprints, the forwarded emails, the new account, everything. I placed the phone back on the dresser, screen down, exactly as it had been. I picked up the fallen shirt from the floor and folded it with methodical precision, my hands no longer shaking. Moments later, he walked out of the bathroom, a towel around his waist, water droplets glistening on his shoulders. He smiled at me, that easy, confident smile that had once made my heart soar and now made my stomach turn. Hey you, he said, his voice warm. Still at it. You're a machine. He walked over to me, wrapping his damp arms around me, pulling me in for a kiss. His lips were warm, and all I could think about were the messages, the hotel rooms, the woman named Chloe. It was like kissing a stranger, a monster wearing my husband's face. I pulled back, forcing a small smile of my own. Just finishing up. My voice sounded normal, level, calm. In that moment, as he looked at me with his lying eyes, I realized I was a far better actor than he ever gave me credit for. The show was just beginning, and he had no idea he was the star. The days that followed were a special kind of hell, a waking nightmare where I was both the victim and the warden of my own silent prison. I had to live alongside the man who had shattered my world and pretend that everything was perfect. It required a level of self-control I never knew I possessed. Every morning, I woke up next to him, the warmth of his body a repulsive reminder of his betrayal. The first thing I felt was a gut-wrenching, physical ache, as if I'd been hollowed out in my sleep. Then, the cold resolve would settle in, a suit of armor I had to put on just to get out of bed. I moved through our life like a ghost, haunting the beautiful home that now felt like a crime scene. Every room held a memory that was now tainted. The kitchen, where we danced while making pasta, now felt like the set of a play. The living room, where we'd curled up to watch movies, felt like a museum of a life that was no longer mine. I would look at him across the dinner table as he talked about his day, about market trends and difficult clients, and I would feel nothing but a profound and terrifying detachment. It was like watching a stranger on a television screen. I would nod, smile, ask the right questions, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying the words from his texts, picturing him in that hotel room with her. He, in his supreme arrogance, noticed something was off, but he interpreted it through the lens of his own condescending narrative about me. "You seem quiet lately, Mads," he said one evening, his brow furrowed with a look of feigned concern. "Everything okay? You're not letting that difficult client from last week get to you, are you?" I just shook my head, stirring the food on my plate. "No, just tired. You're probably working too hard," he said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. His touch felt like a spider crawling on my skin. "You get so wound up in things. You need to learn to relax. Maybe we should take a weekend trip, just the two of us." The offer was so brazenly hypocritical it almost made me laugh. A weekend trip. Was that what he called his time with Chloe? I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from screaming. "Maybe," I said, my voice a flat, lifeless thing. His concern quickly morphed into annoyance. This was the cycle. He would feign sympathy, and when I didn't immediately bounce back and reassure him that everything was fine, his patience would wear thin. "You know, you've been like this for days, Madison," he said a few nights later, his tone laced with irritation. "Walking around with this cloud over your head. If something is wrong, you need to just say it. This silent treatment thing is childish. You're being overly sensitive." There it was. My feelings, my pain, my intuitive response to his monumental betrayal were being dismissed as a character flaw. I was being childish. I was being too sensitive. He was gaslighting me, expertly turning his own guilt into a critique of my behavior. And in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that a private confrontation would have been a catastrophic mistake. He wouldn't have confessed. He would have weaponized my pain against me until I apologized for being suspicious. His dismissal was the final spark. He thought my feelings were a performance. Fine. I would give him a performance he would never, ever forget. My mission for more evidence became my secret reason for living. It was the only thing that gave me a sense of purpose, a light in the suffocating darkness. I became a digital ghost, a detective in my own home. I learned the rhythm of his habits, when he left his laptop open, when he charged his phone in the other room. Each piece of information I gathered was a small, sharp stone I was adding to the mountain of his deceit. One Saturday, he was out golfing with clients. He'd left his wallet on the nightstand. My hands were shaking, but a cold voice in my head urged me forward. "You have a right to know the truth." I opened it. Tucked behind his driver's license was a credit card I'd never seen before. A separate account. I memorized the number and the bank's name. That evening, after he was asleep, I went online. It took me over an hour of guessing security questions, his mother's maiden name, his first pet, but I finally got in. The statement was a roadmap of his affair. There were charges for lingerie stores, fancy restaurants I'd never been to, and recurring payments to the Rosewood Hotel, a boutique place downtown known for its discreet clientele. He was funding his entire secret life with money I thought was going into our shared future. I meticulously downloaded and printed every single statement, the printer whirring softly in my studio like a co-conspirator. The final piece of evidence came from his car. I was driving it one day to run errands, and I connected my phone to the Bluetooth to listen to a podcast. As it connected, the car's infotainment system automatically synced, and a notification popped up on the screen. Daniel's call history. My heart stopped. I pulled over to the side of the road, my hands gripping the steering wheel. There it was, a log of his calls, dozens of them to Chloe, often right after he'd called me to say he was stuck in traffic or in a meeting that was running late. The sheer audacity of it, the logistical planning it must have taken to juggle us both, was staggering. I took photos of the screen, my reflection a pale, grim face in the polished black display. I now had a complete, irrefutable dossier of his affair. The intimate texts, the hotel receipts, the secret credit card statements, the phone logs, and the damning voicemail. It was an arsenal, and I knew exactly what I was going to do with it. The idea came to me late one night, as I was sitting alone in the living room, unable to sleep. My eyes fell on our wedding album, a heavy, leather-bound book sitting on the coffee table. I opened it and stared at the smiling face of a 26-year-old woman in the white dress. She was so full of hope, so blissfully unaware of the cliff she was about to happily walk off. I felt a profound sense of grief for her, for the life she thought she was building. She was gone. That hopeful, trusting woman was dead. Daniel had killed her. And in that moment, the idea bloomed in my mind, dark and magnificent in its terrible perfection. When something dies, you hold a funeral. You gather the people who loved it, you mourn its passing, and you bury it. My marriage was dead. It deserved a burial. It was theatrical. It was dramatic. It was everything Daniel claimed to despise about me. And it would be the perfect stage to present the truth he had worked so hard to conceal. I would use his own perception of me as the ultimate weapon against him. He wanted a drama queen. I would give him a tragedy in 3 acts. I spent the rest of the night in my studio, not sketching, but planning. The grief that had been a suffocating fog began to recede, replaced by a cold, sharp, crystalline purpose. I was no longer the haunted wife. I was the architect of a reckoning, and my masterpiece would be a funeral. He sealed his own fate with every lie, every secret meeting, every condescending dismissal of my pain. The invitations would be sent, the stage would be set, and the casket was waiting. The shift from grieving wife to meticulous event planner was jarring, but it was also my salvation. The grief was a passive, crushing weight. The planning was active, empowering. It was a project. It had deadlines, budgets, and a desired outcome. It gave me a reason to get out of bed in the morning that wasn't just about surviving another day of deception. I was no longer just Madison, the cheated-on wife. I was Madison, the undertaker of a dead marriage. I threw myself into the logistics with a focus that bordered on obsessive. Every detail had to be perfect, every element designed to contribute to the final, devastating crescendo. My freelance work became the perfect cover. I spent my days in my studio, surrounded by sketches and color swatches, but my mind was on funereal arrangements. First, the venue. I couldn't use a real funeral home, so I searched for event halls that were elegant but somber. I found a small, historic hall downtown with dark wood paneling, high ceilings, and a slightly gothic feel. It was perfect. I called the manager and booked it for a Saturday night. "What's the occasion?" the woman on the phone asked, her voice cheerful. I paused, my heart hammering. I had prepared for this. "It's a memorial," I said, my voice carefully modulated to sound wistful and a little sad. "A celebration of life for a cherished partnership that has recently come to an end." "Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss," she said, her tone instantly shifting to one of gentle sympathy. "We'll make sure it's a beautiful and respectful evening for you." The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. Next, the centerpiece, the coffin. This was the most audacious, the most theatrical element of my plan. It had to be there. It was the physical manifestation of the death of our marriage. I found a company online that rented props to theater companies and film sets. I ordered a simple, polished mahogany casket, arranging for it to be delivered to the hall on the afternoon of the event. On the rental form, under production title, I wrote, "The End of an Era." Then came the invitations. As a designer, this was my domain. I chose a thick, cream-colored cardstock. The font was an elegant, somber script. The wording had to be perfect, vague enough to be intriguing, but formal enough to be taken seriously. After dozens of drafts, I settled on the final text. "You are cordially invited to join us in bidding a final farewell to a partnership that was cherished, a bond that was deep, and a love that has recently passed. Please join Madison and Daniel for a memorial ceremony in its honor." I included the date, time, and address. At the bottom, I added a single line, "Funeral attire is requested." I sent them out to a carefully curated list of about 50 people. Our parents, our siblings, our closest friends, the people who had been the primary audience for our 6-year performance of A Perfect Marriage. They were the ones who had invested in our story, who had celebrated our love. They deserved to see how it really ended. The most nerve-wracking part was living with Daniel while all this was happening in the background. My secret life was a constant, humming undercurrent beneath the surface of our daily interactions. There were close calls, One afternoon, he came into my studio unexpectedly while I was on the phone with a florist, ordering 2 large, funereal wreaths of white lilies. I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. "Who is that?" he asked casually, picking up one of my sketches. "Just a new client," I said, my voice miraculously steady. "A corporate event. Very stuffy, lots of white flowers." He just grunted, uninterested, and walked out. I leaned against my desk, my legs weak with relief. His self-absorption, once a source of frustration, had become my greatest shield. He simply couldn't imagine my life having any depth or drama that didn't revolve around him. The day the invitations arrived in our own mailbox was the ultimate test of my resolve. I made sure I was the one to get the mail. I slipped our copy out of the stack and waited for the right moment. That evening, as we were sitting in the living room, I handed it to him. "This came today," I said, my voice a carefully constructed mask of nonchalance. He took the thick envelope, a bemused look on his face. He slid it open with his thumb and read the card. He read it once, then a second time. A slow, condescending smile spread across his face. And then he laughed. It wasn't a small chuckle. It was a deep, hearty laugh that filled the room. "Oh, Mads," he said, shaking his head as if I were a precocious but silly child. "A farewell ceremony? For a love that has recently passed? What is this? Some kind of weird, theatrical anniversary thing?" I just looked at him, my expression unreadable. "I thought it was time to be honest about where we are," I said softly. "Honest? It's bizarre," he scoffed, tossing the invitation onto the coffee table. "But hey, if you want to throw a weird, dramatic party, who am I to stop you? You've always been a drama queen. Just tell me what time I need to show up, and what lies I need to tell your parents about this dead love." He winked, as if we were in on a joke together. His laughter, his condescension, his complete and utter failure to see the cliff he was standing on, it was the final, absolute confirmation that I was doing the right thing. He wasn't just a cheater. He was a man who had so little respect for me that he couldn't even recognize genuine pain when it was staring him in the face. He thought my heart was a stage prop. "Just be there, Daniel," I said, my voice cold. "Wear a black suit." He laughed again. "Whatever you say. It's your show." I stood up and walked out of the room, leaving him there with his smug amusement. He was right about one thing. It was my show, and the final act was going to be breathtaking. I had spent weeks feeling like a ghost in my own life, but now I felt like a director on the verge of opening night. Every piece was in place. Every actor was about to take their position, and the guest of honor had no idea the entire play was about his demise. The invitations were sent, the stage was set, and the casket was waiting. The night of the event, the air itself felt heavy with anticipation, thick and electric like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. I arrived at the hall an hour early, my heart a steady, rhythmic drum against my ribs. The grief and anger that had been my constant companions for weeks had been transmuted into something else entirely, a cold, crystalline focus. I was an actress preparing for the role of a lifetime. The hall was perfect. The staff, believing they were hosting a genuine, if eccentric, memorial, had executed my instructions to the letter. The lights were dimmed to a low, intimate glow. Dozens of tall, white candles flickered on every available surface, their flames dancing and casting long, trembling shadows against the dark wood walls. The air smelled of lilies and melting wax, and in the center of the room, positioned on a draped dais, was the coffin. It was closed, its mahogany surface polished to a deep, mirror-like shine. It was a stark, beautiful, and deeply unsettling centerpiece. A somber, classical piece, Albinoni's Adagio in G minor, played softly through a hidden sound system. The atmosphere was one of profound and elegant sorrow. Guests began to arrive, trickling in twos and threes. They were all dressed in black, as requested, their faces etched with confusion and concern. I watched them from a shadowed corner as they entered, saw their eyes widen as they took in the scene. The coffin was the thing that stopped them all. They would pause just inside the doorway, their polite smiles freezing, their brows furrowing. Whispers erupted like brush fires through the growing crowd. "What on earth is this?" I heard my own sister murmur to her husband. "Did someone die that we don't know about? It's so strange. Daniel's mother whispered to his father, clutching her pearls. Madison has always been a bit artistic, but this is morbid. I greeted each of them with a calm, solemn nod. I didn't offer explanations. I simply thanked them for coming and let the atmosphere do the talking. The confusion was a crucial part of the performance. It was the tension I needed to build before the climax. Then Daniel arrived. He walked in with the easy, confident stride of a man who believes he is the main character in every room he enters. He was laughing mid-sentence, with his brother, a wide, handsome smile on his face. He was wearing a perfectly tailored black suit, looking more like he was heading to a chic cocktail party than a funeral. He stopped short when he saw the coffin, his laughter dying in his throat. He stared at it for a long moment, a look of genuine disbelief on his face. Then he spotted me. He strode over, his expression a mixture of annoyance and amusement. "Okay, Mads, you've made your point," he hissed, his voice low, so only I could hear. "This is insane. A coffin? You're scaring my parents. Whatever weird, passive-aggressive game you're playing, it needs to stop." I just looked at him, my face a serene mask. "The game is almost over, Daniel," I said softly. "Just take a seat. The ceremony is about to begin." He stared at me, searching my eyes for the usual flicker of acquiescence, the sign that he had pushed me far enough and I would back down. He found nothing. He found a stranger. Frustrated and confused, he finally gave up and went to sit with his family in the front row, still shaking his head, still whispering that I was being unbelievably dramatic. When the last guest was seated, I took a deep breath. I walked to the front of the room and stood beside the coffin, turning to face the sea of confused, anxious faces. The music faded into silence. The only sound was the faint, nervous rustling of 50 people in their seats. My voice, when I spoke, was steady, clear. It did not tremble. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my eyes sweeping across the room before finally landing on Daniel. "I know you're confused, and I apologize for the mystery. But some things are too painful to announce on a simple card. Some endings require a ceremony." I rested my hand on the cool, smooth wood of the coffin. "We are not here today to bury a person. We are here to bury something that was, to me, just as alive. We are here to bury my marriage." A collective gasp swept through the hall. It was a physical sound, a sudden, sharp intake of breath from 50 pairs of lungs. I saw Daniel's mother's hand fly to her mouth. My own parents stared at me, their faces pale with shock. Daniel himself froze, his smug expression finally dissolving, replaced by a dawning look of horror. He started to stand up. "Madison, what the hell are you doing?" he demanded, his voice cracking the silence. "I'm telling the truth, Daniel," I said, my voice cutting through his, sharp and cold as ice. "Something you seem to have a problem with. You see, a marriage doesn't just die of natural causes. It's killed, and the murderer is sitting right here in the front row." All eyes swung to Daniel. He looked like a cornered animal, his face turning from red to a sickly, pale white. I had prepared a folder, a black, simple, manila folder. I opened it. For 6 years, I believed I was in a partnership built on love and trust. I said, my voice ringing with a strength I didn't know I had. I was wrong. I was in a partnership with a man who was living a double life. I pulled out the first exhibit, a stack of printed screenshots of his text messages with Chloe. I held them up for a moment, then let them drop onto the lid of the coffin. They landed with a soft, definitive thump. "This is how I found out," I said. "Whispers of love that weren't meant for me. Plans for a future that I wasn't a part of." Daniel was on his feet now. "This is private. This is not for them," he choked out, gesturing wildly at our family and friends. "My humiliation was private, too, Daniel. But your betrayal affects everyone who believed in us," I retorted, my voice unwavering. I pulled out the next item, the printouts of the secret credit card statements. The pages fanned out as I dropped them onto the coffin lid. Thump, thump, thump. He killed it with lies, funding his secret life with money we were supposed to be saving for our future. Dinners, hotels, gifts for another woman. I could see his parents, his mother openly weeping now, his father's face a stone mask of shame. My friends were staring at him with looks of pure, unadulterated disgust. And finally, I said, reaching for my phone and connecting it to the small speaker I had placed on the dais. He killed it with these words. I pressed play, and his own voice, low and intimate, filled the silent, horrified hall. I wish I was coming home to you instead. The sound of his recorded voice, whispering his betrayal for all to hear, was the final, devastating blow. It hung in the air, an obscene ghost. Daniel looked utterly destroyed. He sank back into his chair, his head in his hands, as the weight of his public humiliation finally crushed him. I looked out at the audience, at the people we had both lied to in our own ways. This is where our marriage ends, I said, my voice firm with finality. It is dead. It was murdered by betrayal and deceit. And tonight we bury it. With a slow, deliberate movement, I placed my hands on the lid of the coffin. The final nail. Then I turned, and without a single glance back at the man who had been my husband, or the wreckage of the life we had built, I walked down the center aisle and out of the hall. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside. I took a deep, shuddering breath, the scent of lilies replaced by the clean, sharp smell of the city. I had not shed a single tear. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. For the first time in weeks, I felt nothing but a profound, quiet, and glorious sense of freedom. The show was over. I never saw what happened in that hall after I left. I didn't need to. I heard about it later, in fragmented, horrified accounts from my friends and sister. How Daniel sat there, catatonic, while his family and friends filed past him in stunned silence, not a single one offering him a word of comfort. How he was left alone in that candlelit room with the coffin full of his lies. The fallout was total. His family was deeply ashamed. His friends, our friends, ostracized him. His carefully constructed reputation as the charming, perfect husband was obliterated in a single, theatrical night. He had lost everything, not just his wife, but the respect and admiration he craved more than anything. I filed for divorce the next day. He didn't contest it. There was nothing left to fight for. Some might say my methods were cruel, that my revenge was too public. But his betrayal was a deep and personal cruelty performed in secret. My funeral was simply the act of dragging that secret out into the light. He called me a drama queen, so I used the stage to tell the truth. It wasn't about hurting him. It was about honoring the death of something I had loved. It was about closure. It was about taking the narrative of my own life back into my hands. I didn't just leave my marriage. I gave it a proper burial, and in doing so, I was finally resurrected. Thank you for listening. The end of a relationship, especially one built on lies, can feel like a death. If you believe that sometimes you have to burn the past to the ground to build something new, I'd be honored if you'd leave a comment and share your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice and final acts. Until next time, remember that sometimes the most dramatic endings lead to the most peaceful new beginnings.